How are we doing? Sound?
Is it me?
Joe, Paul, Rachel, can you hear us?
Yeah, you sound fine. There was just some echoes before that, though.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like Jen's mic.
I concur.
Okay, are we all good?
Yep, are you?
Let me hit the recording. Wow.
Thanks for the announcement.
We're ready to go, Madam Chair. Jackson, are we ready to go?
You don't have the broadcast.
No.
You're good on mine.
Okay, I'm good. All right, I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Let the record show that all, we have 6 of 7 board members present this evening with Sue Rozier absent. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda. Jenny will make that motion.
Second.
For Jenny, second by Amy. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a roll call vote.
Ms. Johnson? Ms. Seguin? Mr. Gearkey?
Aye.
Ms. Deppa?
Aye.
Mr. Black?
Aye.
Ms. Rosenau?
Aye. Carried, we have an approved agenda. We'll move right into our work session. First item on tonight's work session is handbook reviews. And we got all links to all these in our Friday email, right?
Links to all the student handbooks, and I believe in order, I think we're going to go with Mr. Hinker, who's going to, I think you can, Jackson, he can go right to the podium, to my understanding.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. I will be able to keep our update pretty short, pretty brief today. I'm sure you saw in the email from Mr. Shane last week on Friday that the changes to the elementary handbook were really, really minor. So if you look through the handbook, the proposed copy that we sent through you, anything in red would be a change. If it has a strike through, that would be something that we deleted. If it is red with the text still there, that would be an addition that was made. Any of the additions that made were like minor switching people into different positions. And then there were a few pieces that we added. We were asked to take a look at the handbooks and try to create some alignment between the 3 buildings. So Barry and I and Joe, we met a few weeks ago and we looked at the handbooks, and what they are aligned when it comes to content. The wording is a little bit different. So if you look at the index in the glossary at the beginning of the elementary handbook, anything that was in yellow, those seemed like the areas that we really needed to pay special attention to make sure that they were similar across the buildings. There were a few areas that were not present in our handbook that were either in the intermediate school handbook or were in the high school handbook. And those were board approved in the past, and we just took those statements and moved it directly over into our handbook. So that way it would include some pieces of information that we thought would be valuable. I think in the future, we would look at probably making the handbooks even more aligned when it comes to maybe even the formatting and some more of the content. But I still think when we were looking through ours, the elementary version is going to have to be different than the high school in the intermediate version. Just there are certain things that are particular to each of our buildings. So I think we can find as much alignment as possible. I think I had suggested you come up with one sort of district format, like a template, and then we just copy and paste and plug our information in. So that way, whether it's ABC order, so it's all kind of the same look and in the same presented in the same way, it would be easier for families that have kids at multiple buildings. But otherwise, the handbook is pretty much the same as what it was in the past, except for those few changes. Are there any questions about any of the changes?
I didn't have any.
Yeah, we're going to do, and I alluded to this several weeks ago when we talked about this in May with Barry's handbook, the high school handbook. Once we get our two new principals on board, we're going to spend a committee time during the school year to take a good hard look and make sure that we can probably have a district-wide student handbook, and within that would be links to each building that is unique to that building on certain procedures or for students and parents or whatever the case may be. So the principals did a good job of getting together and in formatting and getting as close to as they can. But obviously this is going to take a little bit of work to turn that over. So we're making some progress in the area, but next year we'll be revamping it up. So a year from now, we'll be seeing a little bit different organization of a student handbook to be approved by the board.
And I think what we found is when we were reviewing, I kind of caught on to the parents' frustration and struggle. What was in like page 3 in our handbook under this was in a completely different area in the high school one. So just challenging for us, seeing the handbook all of the time, but to have it in the same order and the same structure would be very helpful.
Sure. I do have one quick question.
Yeah.
And it may not be just for elementary, but it's highlighted here that there will be no fee for lunch or breakfast during the 21-22 school year.
That
Is
is-
that true?
Yes, that is
Yeah.
correct.
Okay.
It's not going to be like it was this year, which was the summer food service program. It's called SSO, which is seamless summer option. So every student will get one free breakfast and one free lunch every day available for that.
All grades, all
All
year?
grades, yes.
Okay, because like this year, it stopped at a certain time, right?
It started at the beginning of October because that was something new because of the COVID. Well, now they're saying for next year, for the same COVID reasons, they're going to make it and do another waiver to offer this option to all school districts.
Wow, okay. Because I know this year it stopped now, because I know we're getting
No,
charged again.
No, it didn't.
No,
Well,
it
we're
didn't.
getting phone calls that we're overpassing.
If your children are taking extra meals or second entrees, those are charged still.
Okay,
So
now I know.
You have really hungry
I'm like,
kids.
I figured it was just done, and obviously I don't know everything. Hey, he's like 6 feet tall already, so yeah.
yeah,
Fill
the
himself
regular
up.
meals are still free.
Thank you.
Breakfast.
Just for the
Mine
Rosenau
is not
family.
confusing. Just for your child. Clearly.
We'll go with the intermediate school, Mr. Vio.
Well, thank you, Mr. Shane, and ladies and gentlemen of the board. I shared with you the actual document that we'll be editing after this gets approved, but kind of in summary, some of the things that we made that were substantive changes from the previous book were the previous handbook were our homework section, and basically since all 3 grades have been distance learning and all 3 grades have adopted Google Classroom, that's where we're going to guide our parents to look for homework because basically everybody is posting their homework there rather than creating another homework page and doing some different things. So we're going to just guide them to the Google Classroom, and each child should know how to get to those places. So hopefully that kind of makes things a little bit easier for our families. Also, what you'll notice on page 8 and 9, when we needed to make the determination about scheduling for next year, which was a couple months ago, we didn't have the information that we kind of have now, but we made the decision to not go with 0 hour for a variety of reasons, primarily if we were still in this COVID structure, trying to keep kids, and maybe it will play itself out next year anyway, but for contact tracing purposes and trying to minimize the number of exposures, the 0 hour was too prohibitive. So we put together the schedules and basically posted those in the handbook without the 0 hour schedule because we will no longer be having 0 hour next year. Again, basically for those COVID type reasons. And I'll have Katie revisit that next year and see what how viable that option would be moving forward. I know we certainly have some staff members who really, really appreciated that time and working together and looking at student work. Basically on page 12, there's a link to opting out for the MCAs. That's not really a substantive change. Page 14, as you were referring to, Ms. Rose now, lunch will be free again. However, there is a charge for milk, and there is a charge for the second lunch. So we've kind of highlighted that in our handbook as well. Then moving down a little bit to page 28, there was a link to a reflective improvement plan. And what I have discovered this year is that most of our staff are not using that and turning that in. At least they haven't been this year. So in order to reflect the actual practice of what's happening in the classrooms, we're talking about discipline there. The second corrective action may result in temporary removal from class and or sent to the office, et cetera, et cetera. But that's the practice that our staff is using, and that reflective improvement plan is not necessarily part of that. We did revamp our dress code, and basically what we did is copied and pasted what was in the high school handbook. Again, I think to make things very consistent and seamless, and for our 4th through 12th graders are going to have the exact same verbiage in the policies as far as what is considered to be acceptable attire to be wearing at school. So I think that could help with some of those vague opportunities or discrepancies from one building to the next as well. A couple of other additions, just we added smartwatches into the electronic devices. We've been seeing a couple of those pop up in our classrooms, and we're just adding that into electronic devices because it seems to be a little bit more prevalent. We'll see how, if that trend continues or not. And then also on the very last page, we put in a form for the opt-out of release for student data information. That, along with updating a bunch of our links and name changes. Obviously, Debbie Finley will be moving to the high school, and so we're going to have to be changing those names at a later time when we find out who those successors will be and get them appropriately into the handbook. And that should probably be taken care of and updated by our next meeting in June. Any questions?
I have 2 questions. One's for Joe, and then one is for Matt. Joe, on the one thing that you have in there for homework, it says that makeup work is only for 2 consecutive days missed. Does that mean if the child misses one day, they won't be punished for not doing the work? Because it reads, parent-student requests for makeup work as a result of an absence will only be granted for students who have missed at least 2 consecutive school days. So then do they get the pass on the work?
I certainly don't believe that that's the intention. That we would just get a free one. Can you point me the direction that or what page you're looking at?
It's under attendance procedures.
Okay.
I'll give you a page number, but on my device it doesn't show.
Yep, and I'm just trying to track my way through.
It's right above excused absences.
Go ahead, Barry.
Sorry to jump in here, Joe. The intent of that statement was when parents request that homework be delivered to the office for pickup when the student is absent. Because we would get numerous requests, kids absent one day or whatever. We wanted to kind of give them there. So if it was 2 days absence, then the parents would be provided homework to pick up in the office. Otherwise, the kid would just pick it up when they got back to school. So it's just kind of a workflow management clause.
So there might be a way to clear that up, because as I read it, it sounds like, well, if you miss one day, you're good. And then the other question is for you, Matt. We had talked about this last time, and it's about that parent's right to see students. And you said you were going to have our attorney look into that and give us guidance on that and the wording.
I did not consult with the district attorney on it. If you could, Rachel, just refresh me again. We're talking about parents coming into the schools.
Yep, and ours says that they do not have that right, and I don't believe that's true from anything we've learned. And I know what the intent was. Barry explained the intent was to limit it, but I don't know that we can declare it if it's not actually true.
Yeah, I think what we're gonna do is when we talked about that, we would leave that up to administrative discretion. It's been a practice we've had in place for a while, and it hasn't seemed to come up. I mean, when parents request to see their child on a periodic basis or whatever the case may be, we allow that. But we want to make sure that we also have some verbiage in there to control that as far as how many times and so on and so forth. So a lot of this we can leave to the interpretation that it's the administrator that we've been able to do it. And I don't know if that's ever come up as an issue in practice. I don't know, from principals, has it ever come up as an issue?
There have been occasions maybe where we've had to coach some parents a little bit in order to create some space, but we never just like,
Right.
Policy or procedure. Yeah, there has been some coaching involved, but never to the extent where we would law.
No, I don't know if Rachel basically Barry stated that we've done a little bit of coaching with some parents, but this has never been an outright where we've not allowed a parent to access their child via school.
I think a parent would either have to be a visitor or a volunteer, and it's usually when you see their rationale or purpose for being in school. And in our schools, we all have jobs, either gonna have lunch with their students or they're gonna help with homework. And if a person just said, I'm just coming to visit with my student, I think we would encourage them to visit either before school or after school, or if it was something that was urgent, come down to the office, have a
Right.
conversation, and go back. I don't think we would want the parents to be in the classroom.
Right.
Just because of the distraction that it brings to the learning environment.
Right. I'm not sure if you hear that, Rachel, online.
We cannot.
Okay. But I think that it's pretty much, I can summarize and state from what the principals have stated that it's not, in practice, we have never denied a parent to come and see their child for whatever reason. They usually have a reason to do so. Sometimes there's some coaching involved, just because of the frequency of it. But we want to make sure that we maintain a good academic learning environment too, with the least amount of distractions as possible.
Yep, I completely understand that. I just worry about the wording being inaccurate. When we talk about policies, policy should reflect practice. Practice shouldn't go around policy.
This wouldn't be in the form of a policy, it's just the handbook.
Okay, moving on to the high school one.
Yep.
I've updated our student, the board report that was previously linked, and I added some things on the bottom that basically just outlined some of the updates that were made. Mr. Hinker pointed out that we did some alignment work, and so I've added to the bottom of our board report some of those areas that were aligned. Most specifically, topics along the lines of accidents in school or insurance, lunch program, health services, student records and release of data, attendance, the non-discrimination statement, and then also hazing, bullying, and harassment. So we've just updated some, the topics, as Mr. Hinker pointed out, maybe we're in different locations or they were called different things. So we just did some alignment there to call them the same headings and then include the same language. Otherwise, everything else primarily is the same as it was before. And as Mr. Hinker also pointed out, there's going to be more work to be done, obviously, for alignment.
One question I had was resolution after Peter met with us last month.
Mm-hmm.
What's happening with that? Are there any updates?
So the update was, I spoke with Peter on the Friday after our board meeting, just to provide some more context to the staff's recommendations. There was unfortunately a miscommunication between myself and the site department chair, or I'm sorry, site-based leadership chair, getting him invited to our next meeting. So unfortunately he missed that, but we did schedule another one so that he could present his case to the staff. All staff were invited to that. And then following that, his presentation, we solicited their opinions through a staff survey about yes, we should allow backpacks, or no, we should not. The results of that survey were basically a 50-50 split. So we're actually working right now. It's a little hectic and crazy with this close to the end of the school year, but we're trying to set up another site-based meeting just to figure out where do we go from here. The results weren't necessarily overwhelming in any one way, shape, or form, and so it's likely that we will continue with the original proposal, but we're still looking to set up another meeting to discuss that.
Thanks. Okay, that's it for handbook reviews. No other questions before I move on?
All three of the handbooks will, a little contrary from previous years, we usually approve the high school handbook, but just due to the work that they've been doing to align it, we moved it to, they will be on the, for board approval on the June school board meeting.
Okay. Sounds good. Next item on the work session agenda this evening is 2022 budget.
Yep, so attached to our work session agenda is the preliminary FY22 budget. And most of the budget, it's pretty well set. Diane Johnson did state that she would like a little more time just to look at the current year budget as well as next year's, just to maybe fine tune a couple things. So we're still working on that together. I did build in some salary and benefit assumptions for the groups that are going to be negotiating this year. And again, like we were talking about earlier, we are going to have free meals or free breakfast and one free lunch for students in the FY22 school year. It's at the higher reimbursement rate, so it actually really helps out our food service budget quite a bit. So we're actually looking at coming out even this year or just a little bit under. And I'm going to be reworking the numbers a little bit for food service as well for FY22. So I think I'm showing a tad bit of a deficit. We might actually be positive, a little positive for next year. Still tweaking a little bit. We'll be bringing this to you for final approval at the June school board meeting. But overall, we were deficit spending in the unassigned fund balance this year by 1.2 million. We're looking at deficit spending a little under 1.1 million for next year. So we put into place our $500,000 in budget reductions, reallocations, moving 150,000 of the general fund allocation from staff development into unassigned for next year as well. We did 160,000 for this school year. That was part of it. The allocations that were done last spring. Overall, things are looking good. Does anybody have any questions?
I noticed, I think we've been talking about this, that we're expecting enrollment to come up a little bit because of the people that are coming back from homeschooling and online. Have we gotten any more?
I have not gotten any specific information. A lot of people, especially the homeschool parents, are still saying if there's a mask mandate, they may opt to homeschool again. So this budget is built on a percentage of those families coming back or those students coming back next year. If that does not come to fruition, we'll be having another discussion in the fall about a decrease in gen ed funding. And at this point, we just don't know what's going to happen next fall. It's too soon to tell.
We wrote our policy contingent that as soon as the governor lifted his mask mandate, that our mask policy. Am I remembering correctly?
I'd have to look back at the actual policy. That's on my to-do list and probably take action if it's appropriate at the June school board meeting to revoke the mask mandate.
I don't know that, has he revoked it for schools yet though?
No, that's why hopefully we've got some guidelines that it all comes down to whether the executive order is ended. Once the executive order is ended, any of the executive orders that he has facilitated, once they end, that means we could revoke that policy. We're still getting guidance for summer programming. So basically right now, schools are required to have students and staff anybody in the buildings wear masks until the last day of school. actually the last teacher day, which would be Friday the 4th. After that, we're seeking additional guidance that are different for summer programming, summer school, TAC, people that are coming in to work out and things like that. But we don't have any official executive order closure ending yet. He still has executive powers. So we're just waiting to get some more information before I recommend to the board that we do whatever we need to do with the mask policy.
Because I remember I was kind of being a pain in your behind around having that language in there.
Yeah.
That's why it's sticking with me is.
Okay.
I was like, Matt, we need to have it end, but then that one ends, so we weren't lagging, but that is tricky, isn't it?
It is. We
It's like
just
it's
don't.
Executive, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a little, we just need a little more time to get some clarification from the state.
I mean, obviously, if the COVID numbers are really low, it speaks for itself. But you talked to a lot of your cohorts. I'm envisioning a mad scramble in August, right? As we get no info in June and July. Is there any talk of when we're going to hear from the Minnesota Department of Ed or Health or any of those people on this? Or is it just too early?
It's a little too early. The only concern, or probably the biggest variable right now, is there isn't a vaccine for 12 and under. Well, that represents half of the student's population in a district, usually, depending. So that's the one variable that we still got to figure out. I know they've given us some guidance, but none of it goes into place until at the end of the school year. So we don't have, it's a little too soon to have I haven't received any information from the Department of Ed. Usually the commissioner will facilitate some more. We're getting guidance. We got updated guidance on graduation. We got updated guidance on several other things, but we just haven't gotten any guidance for next year.
Okay. Do you want to go through any questions on the budget before we move on to LTFM?
Okay, so the second set of information is on LTFM. So I linked what we're looking to spend our LTFM expenditures for next year. So I sat down with Matt Lebeau to go through a couple different little projects that he might have going on. He does have some parking lots that need to be updated, but because they're doing the roundabouts right outside the elementary school, he just thinks trying to do parking lots and having all of that extra traffic being rerouted would be too difficult this year. So we'll probably look at doing some of those projects next year or next summer, but this summer it's going to be a little lighter than in prior years just because there's so much happening right around our facilities.
Is he looking to just do surface repair or?
He'll do some pothole repair, and even those we're not seeing as huge of holes as we have in the past in some of our areas. So he's gotten a lot of it fixed up already, but there are a couple areas that will probably have to be addressed in summer. But one of the things that is required with LTFM every year is that I have to come to you with a 10-year plan, as well as for revenue and expenditures for you to approve and pass a resolution. But I will also come to you with a revised budget for the current school year as well and have a resolution passed as well. We're probably going to underspend a little bit this year. He's got some projects in place, and until we get a little closer to June, I don't know if they're actually going to happen in June or if it's going to be more of a July thing. So I'll be playing with those numbers a little bit, but overall, we won't be spending more. We would be spending less than the current year and possibly having to move them into the next year. But I've got those reflected here already if that were to happen. So we're probably going to get about $900,000 in revenue, which that's your really big paper. Mm-hmm. And then or a little over $1 million in revenue, and we're going to spend about $727,000. So we need to underspend in certain years to make that money last, because we've got some bigger projects, some roofing issues that'll have to be addressed in the coming years as well. So any years that we can deficit or underspend, it's just to help offset some of the really big projects that are making good, that will come in the future.
Can you provide a little bit more detail on the health and safety and then the mechanical systems? Obviously, with the pandemic. I've lost sight of the drama around the boiler and all of that kind of, is that all?
Our boilers, we continue, that's all through climate makers, they're the ones we've been working with, but the elementary boiler, we did have to replace this last year, so that's been taken care of. But when you have a building like the high school building that had multiple add-ons and you just kept adding on to, we changed the boilers in the high school, but we didn't change all of the piping and everything that was attached to it. So that's where we're kind of running into issues, is that some of the stuff is just so old, it needs to be replaced. So we had to replace the elementary boiler this past year, one of them. There's actually two there. And the control system was still based on the old one from 1992. So we've had to update that this year as well. So I budget about 150,000, but we spend more like 200. So I'm just upping it for next year. The health and safety, those are fall material for the playground. We contract with Resource Training and Solutions. We have Scott George come in twice a month. He goes through all of the right to know and the special trainings that they do with the custodians. Plus they come in and do a mock OSHA inspection every year. That's also where we have money set aside if we need to do recycling of light bulbs and things of those natures or that nature. And also if we had any asbestos that needed to be addressed, which since our building project, everything, we don't have much left in the district, but what we do is in good condition. So we're not disrupting it. We're going to leave it as is. And it also covers fire safety. So we had our 3-year fire inspection for all of our buildings this year. That comes up once every 3 years, but we have miscellaneous fire panel repairs that have to be taken care of every once in a while. So that's what the health and safety piece is. And then all of the other components of LTFM are separated out.
Yeah, thank you, Mary.
So you're welcome. Any other questions? So yeah, at the June board meeting, I will bring the full reports. They usually don't post them till the beginning of June, but I like to have them approved at the June meeting so that they're included on the first levy run that we get in July. Okay, thank you.
Reverting back to Ms. Johnson's question about the face covering policy. Under the purpose, this policy will remain in effect as long as Emergency Executive Order 2081 is in effect. So once that 2081 is not in effect anymore, I will probably still recommend that the board revoke or rescind it, remove the policy.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay. Any other questions for Mary? Okay.
I know we had an audio problem with Amy. People online, can you hear Amy when she speaks?
We can now.
Anyone?
Anyone online? Can you hear when Amy Johnson speaks? Is she heard?
You can say something, Amy.
I can hear her now, Matt.
Joe? Were you able to hear Amy when she was talking?
Hi, Joe.
Yes?
Hi, Amy.
Hi, Joe.
Yes. We can hear her now.
Okay, we corrected the problem. Thank you.
Okay.
Jackson keeps turning off my mic. Thanks, Jackson.
Yeah. He doesn't like what you're saying. All right, moving on, next item, committee updates. Look like we've got our student board reps here this evening.
Yeah, John will be here for the meeting as well, but Bridget hopefully will join us for the business portion of the meeting and she can catch us up with her report then.
Sounds good. Then we've got a referendum committee update. We actually met as a board. Not so much as the committee, but the board met to go through referendum stuff to review the survey results.
Yep, we have a referendum committee meeting scheduled for this coming Thursday.
Yep.
We're going to take a little deeper dive. We're actually going to, Mary and I, Paul are going to prepare a little bit more information for the committee to take a look at to kind of turn around and be prepared for the June 9th special meeting for the board to move a little bit closer to what this looks like in compiling the survey data. So I'm envisioning that we would have a few options. If the board is interested in moving forward in a referendum in the fall, what would that look like? So we would like to put that together in the form of what would it be, in a matter of one question, two questions, and then the amount. So we're going to narrow that down once we look at it. I have a Zoom meeting with Baker Tilly just to get a further clarification on a few other pieces of information. We should be getting the last detailed report, open-ended report this Wednesday.
Okay. Questions? Any other committee updates? And we've got some stuff on the regular agenda meeting tonight too, but any other updates? Or any other topics? If not, I will entertain a motion to move to recess.
So moved.
Motion by Amy, second by Corey. Any discussion? Hearing none, we will move to a roll call vote.
Ms. Segwin,
Aye.
Mr. Black,
Aye.
Ms. Deppa,
Aye.
Mr. Gierke,
Aye.
Ms. Rosenau,
Aye.
Ms. Johnson.
Aye.
All right, you're in recess. You'll resume at 7 o'clock.